Welcome back to the David F. Haas podcast. In this episode, I sit down with my friend and the guy who bought Treehouse from me, Randy Collins. We talk everything about how to overcome generational victim mentality, what it is that he's been able to see now that he's a business owner that he could never see when he was an employee. This is a great conversation. I hope you really enjoy the show with Randy Collins. Wonky chair over here that I have to kind of lean off. Really, you got the better chair, but it's also wonky.
That's a little wonky.
Anyways, Randy Collins, the new owner of Treehouse Bar and Grill. Yeah. So just kind of, we were just chatting before about like what we're going to chat about, but I think one of the things that I always admired about you, Randy, was you worked full time at Chrysler, right? Day job essentially. And then COVID put you into like working from home. You're raising 2 kids, you got a household, and then you were DJing at Treehouse. 3-4 nights a week, sometimes till 2 a.m, 3, even later, 3 a.m, over like certain stretches. Sometimes you'd be there 4 or 5 nights, 12 nights of Christmas and stuff. So it's like, I guess this is the deep question I want to ask you is like, what is it in you that created that drive to like work an 8-hour job plus another 5-6 hours at night?
I think it started with my family, the way my mom raised. My mom worked, all the time, and basically seeing her go to work every day, come home. Whether she was tired or not, she would cook our meals, get us ready for school, everything that had to do to get us prepared. She had 5 boys. My father wasn't there, so it was just her. So just learning from her just instilled in me that I had to do that and make sure that take care of my family, make sure that I had the work ethic that I needed to have to be successful. And obviously, I came from like the projects, and we were kind of poor. It's like I wanted to be successful, and I was like, the only way to be successful is you got to get out there and you got to bust your butt. So.
Yeah, I was just talking to my buddy James Knapp, and we were talking. We kind of on the podcast kind of uncovered like there's 2 types of people that like become successful. One is the person who's like insanely fearful of failure and like just does not want to fail at all costs. And he's kind of like that because he grew up like his dad was successful already, so he's like, I just can't fail. And then there's other people that are like so fearful of poverty that they're just like going like all in. And I'm kind of like that person, and he's kind of the opposite. So there's the 2 people. I think you're probably the same. It's like when you kind of like see what it's like and the shame that goes along with like being poor, and you and I have a lot of similarities like with respect to like our house, and we've talked about like renovations and stuff of like the tile, is it perfect, and like there's a piece of trim that's not cut right, it's like it'll drive us insane. And it's all about not wanting to experience that shame. And so a lot of the work I did was to get rid of that shame, and so that I could still move forward without this negative motivator. And I say negative in some ways because it's like, it's not like it's like overly negative, but it almost becomes like an obsession for success, as opposed to like, hey, I'm just going to move in this direction. And if it comes, great. And if it doesn't, great. In our world, previous to kind of, opening the door to spiritual work, it was like, there was no, if it doesn't, and we just didn't trust. We didn't trust so much that we had to like make sure that we put in like an insane amount of work. Right.
Yeah, and it's that fear of failure that everybody has, but in certain cultures, like in my culture, it's like you had examples of, I have examples in my family of people who failed and people who've been successful. And I was like, I can't. I had to make sure that I was successful, so I had to put more energy into it, and it kind of drove me that way. But like you said, it's kind of that fear of failure that is the drive for you to try to be successful and to put in the work. And beyond that, like I said, just watching my mother every day was just a perfect example.
And you just kind of like, with that, you just kind of like got it by osmosis, right? Like, it's just like, you just were around her all the time and just watched the amount of energy that she put in and effort that she put in. You're like,
well, to this day, I don't understand how she did it because I'm like, you got 5 boys, it's just her. She met every day. She made sure we got fed, made sure we got to school, up and dressed to school, then get up and go to work, come home, same thing every day. I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah, and when you think about like someone like your mom, like single mom, you know, you guys were living in Detroit in like rough neighborhood, raising 5 boys. Also, like boys are freaking maniacs. I have girls, so it's like you have one of each, so you understand the difference. Like, but I see my friends with boys and they're nuts, right? and so to raise 5 boys, it's just like it's a testament to like you know, the amount of sacrifice your mom had to make to kind of like raise you guys, because you know as a parent, it's like parenting is like interesting. It's like it's because you know I'm really into like being a dad, obviously, you know, and like because I think that all the shit that I was chasing my whole life, like, you know, being in shape, picking up girls, making money, it's like all to me now, like in comparison to like being a dad, is like it just doesn't even mean anything. It's like all bullshit.
Yeah,
you know. But it's also this strange thing about parenting that is like, it's like sometimes you want to like kill yourself. Like this is fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Like these kids are just like honest, especially for me now. And you're in a better place, I think, than I am.
That's so
but like for me now, sometimes they're like, oh my God, this is so difficult. But then it's funny because it's like you get like one glimpse of like just like they just, you know, they look at you in a way, or they do something funny, and you're just like, wow, I just love that kid so much. And so the way it was back in the day, and this probably how you were raised, and this is how I was raised, we weren't in this like helicopter parent mode. Like my parents were like, I went out the door at like 7 years old, you know, at 9 a.m. and then I didn't come back till, you know, dark, essentially, kind of thing. But now it's like we really watch everything our kids do, kind of thing, right?
Oh yeah. For me, it's more like understanding the fact that you have another human being that you're responsible for.
Yes.
And before that, it was like all about you. Yep. Now it's about them. So making that switch in your brain and then all that stuff is even to this day, I still get to where I'm doing something I want to do. And I'm like, I don't want to have to go take him to practice because I'm doing what I want to do. But it's like, okay, I got to take him to practice. Yeah. That whole just training your mind to become responsible for another human being. Like right now, they've been bugging me about buying a dog, and I'm like, a dog is another life that I gotta be responsible for.
Yeah,
I already have enough with you guys.
Yeah.
So now it's like, you know, and I mean, my kids they're different. You know, my daughter is very different from my son. You know, I've told you stories about my son. He's a crazy. So now I'm just going through this battle with him, and it's interesting and it's fun and it's horrible and it's all those things.
Yeah, that's it. I love that you said that.
Because it's just like I want to tear his head off sometime. It's just, you know, and sometimes I'm just like, that's my son. I love him so much, and I want the best for him, and he doesn't see, and I probably didn't when I was that age. I didn't see what my parents were trying to instill in me, and the frustration of them not seeing it is the hardest thing, because I'm like, don't you get what I'm trying to tell you? Don't you get how I'm trying to help you to be a better person, help you to succeed, help you to understand? Like, he's having trouble in school now with grades, partly because he's a very social kid, and he's more into social, being a social, popular person in school and not focusing on his grades. So I'm trying to tell him, like, look, dude, all that social stuff, it's not going to matter. You need to focus on your grades, because at the end of the day, it's good to be social. I don't want you to be, you know, unsocial or whatever, but you have to understand your future is going to depend on how you succeed in school and learn and stuff like that. And it doesn't get easier. Every step you take is going to get harder. I had long talks with him. I even try to like scare him a little bit. Like, yeah, you know what? I have friends when I grew up, they went to jail, and some of them just got out of jail. They was in jail for, you know, this long or whatever. That's what happens if you don't, you know, take care of what you need to take care of and try to get yourself on the right path. But at this age, he just is not. He feels like, oh, I'm okay.
Yeah, and it is a strange parenting thing to where you, because you can see like all the mistakes that they're gonna make, right? You know, and like, and you want to prevent them from making those mistakes, but unfortunately, sometimes the best way for people to, you know, to learn is through making of those mistakes. And then, so then it's like, you have to walk this fine line of like guiding them without seeming too forceful, because naturally kids, everybody is going to go the opposite of what they're being told to do. So if you're telling him to be a better student, he's going to naturally resist that because and it's unconscious because he doesn't want to be told what to do. So if he starts getting good grades, then you're right and he's wrong, and then that's what you're kind of up against, right? And so I always challenge parents in my coaching practice, because I say, you know, I had this one classic, I can't remember who it was. I think it was like one of my clients. Like, I was at a retreat and the client says, like, if I don't tell my kid to brush his teeth, like, he won't brush his teeth. And I was like, well, then I'm like, what will happen if he doesn't brush his teeth? Well, then he's going to go to school and people are going to, you know, make fun of him because he's got bad breath or whatever. And I'm like, yeah. And then he'll start brushing his fucking teeth, right? You know? And so she was like trying to control her, you know, insecurities to make sure that he didn't have the same experiences that she had, right? But it's like, if someone tells a kid you have bad breath once, is like, that kid brushes his teeth 3 times a day now, right? And so it's like, it's just like this dance of allowing them to make mistakes, right? And not trying to control them too much, but at the same time, you know, trying to guide them towards what it is that you can see that they can't, right? And so it is an interesting place to be. But the thing is that I love about like kids is that they're such great teachers for us. Like the buttons that he's pushing in you right now, like that frustration you're talking about, is a doorway to be like, well, what's really going on inside of me, right? And like I've projected a lot of like my stuff onto Harlow as like being like, you know, when I was a kid, actually I had really bad teeth. I had like because I had sulfur water growing up. I had like brown stains on my teeth, and I experienced like a lot of shame from that. So like when I'm like really on her about like brushing her teeth, right? And so it's like, so the teeth thing is near and dear to my heart. But at the same time, it's like if you push too hard, then they start pushing back and going in the other direction. So yeah, I mean, I think kids are just like such a great window to like look within, you know, and you got Landon who's really helping you.
Yeah, he's testing everything in my being right now.
Yeah, right.
And I think in a good way, but I guess it goes back to when we were having our sessions. We were talking about how I need to understand that the things that he's doing are have a purpose, and in some way is helping me, and I have to figure out how it's helping me, and then be able to communicate better with him. Because at this point right now, I feel like, you know, we haven't had our session in a while. I feel like I started sliding off because it's just like, you know, we talked about this before, it's like once you're at ground level, everything seems like it's just so much going on. But when you can go back and you can look at things from a big picture, a higher level, looking at it overall, then you kind of can see, okay, maybe I need to change this. But when you're in the moment, it's like, I just want to kill this kid, because you're not thinking that, you know, that level. So that's where I'm at with now. But like you said, a lot of things, it's like you protecting your kid, or you think you're protecting your kid, but maybe they need to experience certain things. Because for a perfect example is when my daughter was learning how to ride a bike, and she had we took off the training wheels and stuff like that, and my wife's like, okay, go take her out. So my wife was watching me. I wouldn't let her ride like 2 feet. I'm like right next to her like this, holding the bike, and the bike would start wobbling, I'll grab it. And my wife's like, you're not letting her ride the bike because you're right there. So then I was like, but what if she falls? She gonna hurt her, you know, knee and stuff like that. And then my wife took her out, and then she fell, and I was like, oh my God, you let her fall, you know? And then pretty soon Victoria finally learned how, you know, she fell a couple of times and she got on there and kept going. But that's an example of if you try to be there and think you can catch them from every little fall and stuff like that, it's not letting them learn how to be a person.
100%, right? And so it's like you're trying to avoid the pain that maybe you experience as like a kid for your kid, and then what that does is it's like it protects them, right? And so unfortunately, you gotta be comfortable in that. The big thing I've been working with my clients a lot with me with as recently is the recognition, and you can do this with your spouse or with your kids, but it's like the recognition, like your behavior that seems like a good behavior, like you're trying to make sure that Landon doesn't fail in school, let's say, right? And you're like, I'm doing this because I care about you and I'm a good father, but it's actually about the protection for you, about how you will feel if your son is like a shitty student. Absolutely. Right? And so then you'll be embarrassed. You'll feel like you didn't do a good job. So really, that mechanism is really about your protection, right? And so it's like, yeah, that's why I say like kids are like these great windows, you know, and it's difficult to like let them fail, you know, because it's like, you know, that if they fall off their bike, they're going to skin their knee and they're going to cry, right? And that's going to make you sad that they're hurt. And so then we just don't let them fall. But if we never let them fall, right? And so, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and I love being a parent. I love like looking within and learning about myself, because it's really what it is. It's like you got to keep it's like there's this whole nother element of like learning about yourself when you have kids, because they're just like, they just show you like all your weak points. You know, they'll frustrate you and make you angry, and their sadness will make you run away from sadness and everything along those lines. But anyways, let's shift off of parenting. You know, so we started working together, doing, you know, essentially like spiritual growth, and you hit the nail on the head. And that's what I love about coaching is that you said it. It's like when you're at ground level, you're just in it. And what coaching does, what spiritual growth does, is it takes you and you can kind of like step back and you can see everything that's going on, or the coach will point it out to you, right? And then when you finally see it, you go, oh shit. But what you're experiencing right now is what I found with like a lot of clients is like when they're in some sort of coaching or program or something, they're really having all of these awarenesses, all right? And then I send them back off into the world on their own, right? And if there's not some sort of consistent like looking within in place, then what happens is our old programs just come right back in. And if you're not careful, then all of a sudden you're just like right back to like kind of where you started. Now the good news is if you start back up, you like get back to where you were quicker. And and I have like a great example of that. I just got back to MMA and doing jiu-jitsu, and when I was in MMA, I had my one thing was like I was claustrophobic. So if someone would get on me and I'd be breathing heavy, got my mouth guard in, they would get on top of me and I would start having like a panic attack, like I'm gonna die. And then over time, I was more comfortable in it. It was fine. And I was good. And so now I took like a 10-year hiatus from MMA, and I started going back, and I'm rolling with this big guy, and he gets on top of me, and boom, it's back. I'm like, what the fuck? I thought I was over this. But it was because I hadn't continued to expose myself to it, right? I took this hiatus and I went right back to my go-to when I got into that position, which was to panic, right? You know? And so that was like such a great metaphor for doing this work. And that's what I would like, you know, part of the work that we did led you to kind of buying the treehouse in some ways, right? Because you're recognizing like, hey, you had more confidence in yourself, and you recognize that you could like move forward and advance. And one of the things that you had said that, you know, you want to build something that would be like a legacy for your family kind of thing. And, you know, you recognize you weren't going to do that working for Chrysler essentially. Right.
Yeah. And, you know, the training, it is like, you know, I say it's almost like when you go to the doctor and they give you something to relieve your pain or something like that, and you keep taking it and your pain is gone, and then once you stop taking it, you like craving that again. So in a way, it's kind of like you have to build a habit. I don't know if I built a habit, if we had it long enough for me to build a habit, but I don't feel like I did it long enough to build a habit, because the tools that we learned and stuff like that is something that you have to work through over time, and then they become just natural things that you do. So that's where I felt like, no, I kind of didn't get to that point. And now it's like, okay, I need to refocus, and I need to come back and figure out how to use those tools again to get back to where I'm at, and not just with my kids, but with everything. Because you know, there's a lot of things going on in my life that I'm like, man, you know, it's starting to wear on me and stuff like that, and how do I cope with it, and what's the coping skills. It's not like, it's like, you go exercise and stuff like that, and then you say, okay, I'm gonna take care of my body, I'm gonna exercise, I'm gonna eat healthy and do all this stuff, and then a month later, you're not doing it anymore, and it either gets worse after that, because now you feel bad because I was doing it, and now I'm not doing it, and I get even more depressed because I'm not, what I'm saying? It's kind of like it builds up at some point. And right now I feel like I'm in a place where I need to deal with some issues and come up with coping skills and stuff like that. So I feel like I probably need to go back and get some more coaching. And I talk to people. I'm like, yeah, I did coaching, and it helped me. And I need you did coaching. Why did you do coaching for? You got a great job. You got this and this. What do you need coaching for? And it's like, I think this one guy was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You're a grown man. What do you need coaching for? And I explained to him what it did, and then by the end of the conversation, I kind of convinced him that that kind of makes sense, right?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that with coaching, and there is like a kind of a stigma around coaching, and but it's like we get coached at everything we do our whole entire lives, right? And like it's like, if you want to be a better golfer, you go get a coach. If you want to make more money in your business, you hire someone that's already done it. Right. It's like, or you want to be better at soccer, you have a coach. And then all of a sudden we just like get thrown into the world, and we just stop getting coached. And it's like, well, how are you supposed to know how to like deal with your anger or your stress or whatever? And so like, essentially that was the kind of coaching that's the kind of coaching that I do, is I help people uncover what emotions they're avoiding and teach them how to face them, so that avoidance of that emotion, the protections that you created to not feel that emotion, no longer are limitations for you, right? And so like I think it's the most important thing you can possibly do. That's
what I was saying. I think it's the ego. Like we were talking about the ego before. Yeah. It's the ego that says, "Oh, why do you need? You don't need to be coached.
We can do this on our own."
Why do you need that? And it's nothing in this world. I don't care who you are. Even people say Elon Musk is like this great person or whatever. But every person in the world needs somebody else to help. You can't do this all on your own. And the way people think now is that and that's what makes people even more. They get into this rut even more. Because once they see they can't do it on their own, they get so frustrated, and they don't want to go to anybody, because then that's like, I admitted that I'm wrong. I can't do it alone. Yeah. And even with my wife, I told you when I first started coaching, she was like, "What are you going? What are you doing? Yeah. Why are you doing this?"
Yeah, right.
And I had to convince her that this is what I feel like I should be doing, and I feel like it's going to help me. If it doesn't help me, then okay, I won't do it. But if it does help me, then why not? Try it.
Yeah, I'm all about becoming the best version of myself, and like that's kind of like what led me to spiritual growth, was that there was a recognition that the way that I was living was not serving me, right? And so then I had to start asking the question, well, why am I living in this way? Which was like, the way I was living was partying, drinking, all of this, obsessed with making money, and everything was in excess. And so I was like, well, I'm not like actually happy. And so, and I'm also not getting the things that I want. Right. And so that's when I'm like, okay, well, obviously something is off here. And so I'm like, what was it? And luckily I had Andrew that was kind of guiding me down the path. And then once you kind of start uncovering it, you go, oh shit. Right. Like this is, to me, I think it's the only thing that matters, is like, cause if you solve for what's going on inside, right? Like you had said, I need to work on coping mechanisms, but one of the things that we would do is like, there is no coping mechanisms. Like it's like I don't want to give you any additional tools. Like a coping mechanism would be like alcohol. Like, oh, hey, you're stressed out, here's some alcohol. That's a coping mechanism. What I would do for you, and what we did together would be like, well, what is going on? And what is the emotion that you're not wanting to feel here, right? And then be okay in that feeling. Yeah. And then there's like, once you're okay in that feeling, it's like similar to that jiu-jitsu story I was telling you. It's like, I just have to keep putting myself into the feeling of I can't breathe, someone's on top of me, I'm panicking, and then eventually I'll be okay there. So now all of the thoughts about avoiding that situation or whatever, it all goes away because I'm okay in this tight situation, essentially, right? And that's ultimately, summing up kind of, and that's what you were able to uncover. I think one of the hugest things that you uncovered was about like this generational, like being African American and this generational, like I don't want to use victim, but it is essentially victim. It's like, we're the victim of slavery, and that mindset stays with you, and it's like waiting for, like right now it's like and this is what downtown Windsor was always in the bar business, like we're the victim of, like and that's where I was the victim of everything. I was like, it's the city of Windsor, it's the Alcohol and Gaming Commission, it's Canada in general. These were all the things that were controlling my success. And then you have this generational kind of like energy that you had to like wake. Like you had to be able to see and then like I'm letting this hold me back, right?
Yeah.
Not that it didn't happen and all this stuff, like of course, but you had this moment of like ownership, right? I remember it was like a light bulb went off where you're like, I'm not gonna. Yes, this all exists, but I'm not gonna let it like dictate my life anymore. Right? I'm not gonna wait for this to go away for me to be happy, essentially. Yeah. And that's when like that was like a big turning point for you. And I specifically remember when we kind of like uncovered that we did it in like a meditation. We're like this is what it was. It was like the meditation was that we did was like, what's the root cause of racism is what we said. Yeah. Right. Remember we did this meditation.
Solve racism.
Yeah, we're trying to solve racism. That's the kind of shit that we do, right? And then I remember that the answer came from, it was all like fear of the unknown, right? That's where it all began, was like somebody saw somebody that didn't look like them and immediately there's a fear. Right. And from that fear, what do you try and do to protect yourself from fear? Well, you dominate, you control, you do all of these things, and then boom, we have racism. And like this was like at the core of what's going on there. But you were able to say, okay, yeah, all of that was true and it's all there, but now I'm taking ownership for my life. And so like, I don't know, give me your version of that, because I'm kind of putting words in your mouth. But
once we talked about it, and for me, it was always how does the culture and the generation, being African American and coming up from where we were as African Americans, it's a unique experience. Mm-hmm. And I found a lot of my culture and the people in my culture relied on that, what happened in the past and stuff like that. And they would always say, okay, one example is like, if you're going to do something as an African American, you got to do it twice as or three times as good as a white person, mm-hmm. because they're going to get first, first whatever, because yep. they because that's how it is, and you can't get around that unless you do things, and I acknowledge that as a person. I'll tell you, back in the day, I would say when I was in my early 20s and I was in college, I was like probably the most pro. I was like Malcolm X. I was like, hated white people.
You're a Black Panther.
I was like, yeah, this is the reason why, And a lot of things, if you listen to Malcolm X, a lot of things that he talked about was true. But then he came to a realization at the end of his before he died, that maybe what he was saying was true, but how to overcome that was not the right way, because it was him and Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was talking about having peaceful demonstrations and having things, mm-hmm. Marching and stuff like that. And he was talking about let's get guns and fight people. But at the end of his, he started talking differently. But overall, after that period in my life, I started to understand that, what I did with my life, more so, especially as an individual person, has to do with not just my culture, but just me as a person and learning how to overcome obstacles and stuff like that. So I was the only one in my family that went to college, and to me that was a big step. And even then I felt like, I can't, when I go to college, all these other people are gonna be way smarter than me because I'm African American and I don't have that. I grew up we went to public school. I didn't go to Catholic school where they had way more advanced programs and stuff like that. But what I did was I talked to one of my teachers in my class, and I say, I'm going to college. I don't know if I have all the qualifications or all the advanced classes that I needed. Can you help me? And he said, sure. And he took out an hour a day after class, and he would just have me in class. I was like, it was so funny because, I would watch my friends going home from school, and they looking at me like, what are you doing? Why aren't you going home? I was like, because I'm trying to get into college. I want to take this. The teacher is willing to give me extra hours to teach me some advanced stuff so that I can get into college. And then after I did that, I finally got into college, and I struggled for a little while, but then I was able to get into management or get into my degree and end up passing and stuff like that. But all those things let me know that I had the ability to do it. And it was not just the fact that, okay, you have all these barriers as an African American.
Yeah. And that's what we were uncovered also, was that if you stop seeing them as oh, my life sucks because I have to do more than the white man, essentially. If you stop seeing them as a negative, you could actually see the good that came from them. Which I can't remember what you exactly said. It was like the white guy started on the 50-yard line and we're starting right. But I think what I said to you in that moment was well, who's going to be stronger? The guy that started at the 50-yard line, he's only got 50 yards to go, or the guy that already went 50 yards and now has 50 yards? And that's kind of what happened to you, right? Was that you doing that extra work, right? You were doing it out of this I'm less than on unconscious level, right?
Yeah.
I'm less than, so I need to do more, right? But that actually ended up serving you, right? Because you were able to, get better grades and go to college and all of those things. So it came from that extra effort.
It's a whole it can be a whole book written on this whole thing. How you overcome this stigma that, okay, as an African American, you have to be this because, like I said, it's a unique situation because you walk into a room and it's like you can have, say a Italian guy walk into a room. Everybody knows he's white. You have African, the color is there. So it's you can't ignore it.
Sure. Yeah.
So the first impression that went back in the day, I always say, well, as soon as I walk in the room, I'm not going to get the job, or I'm not going to get it because they're going to see me and they're going to be like, he's African American, or you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Just that, thought of the racist, what they call it institutional racism.
Yeah.
And trust me, I still believe it is institutional racism because it's human nature and it has to be because everybody's protecting their own. At the end of the day, you're protecting your own. So it is there. But how do you get past that is what we were discussing. Because I can sit in there and be like, okay, it's instant. I can't do shit because whatever I do, somebody's gonna knock me down.
Yeah.
I can sit there and just take that, or I can say, okay, what am I gonna do and how am I gonna overcome that? And the first part of it is to put that part, like you said, put the part of that in your mind that, oh, I have to work harder. Okay, I have to work harder to do this. But once I get there, even buy a treehouse. When we first talked about it, I was like, you were like, Randy, you want to buy a treehouse? I was like, fuck, I don't know. It's a big, thing for me. And I've never owned a business. I've never, took on something like that. But then I went home, I talked to my wife about it. And then I thought about what we were talking about. What do I want in life? And how do I want to get there? And one of the things I wanted is to not be beholden to anybody. Like beholden to the whims of a company who can say, okay, you're fired, we go in another direction, And then now my future is not in my hands anymore. It's more in somebody else's hands. And I thought about that, and I'm like, why would I not be, And it's funny because I was talking to a guy, he's from Jamaica. He's on my son's soccer team, and he came to Windsor like 3 years ago. And he was telling me how he was an entrepreneur in Jamaica. He had like 3 businesses in Jamaica, and he came here and he took a job as a real estate guy. And he said, as soon as I got here, he's like, look, I can't do this. He said, I have to have my own business. And within about, I would say, half a year after talking to him, he's like, already, I just bought it. He got a UPS store.
Wow.
And he's running it. And then we started talking, and he was like, one of the things about our culture is we didn't understand that the ownership, having ownership is probably one of the biggest things that we lacked as a community as our goals. And our goals was, I'm gonna get a nice job, get a good car, buy a big house. I'm at this point where I don't care. I can live in a fucking shack right now.
Yeah.
I don't care. It's more about I have ownership now. I have ownership in something that I can leave to my kids. And that was the biggest thing, is that generational wealth is something that, as an African American, that I feel like that's something that really would make a big difference in my life.
Right. And also, though, part of leaning into that was that taking ownership, right? Was that like, there was in a victim mindset, right? You're the victim of this generational racism or whatever. In that victim mindset, you're constantly waiting for someone else to like kind of like do something for you. Like, even though you went to college and you got the job, but you were still waiting for your employer to give you a paycheck every week, right?
Absolutely.
And so when you transcended that, it was a really big aha moment, right? That it was actually what led you to saying, hey, I'm going to buy Treehouse, right? Because you're like, I'm taking ownership for everything in my life. And so, it was like a huge shift for you there. And, the good news is it's also like you probably like raised up a bunch of people around you as well, because it's like the tide raises all boats, and it's like you don't even have to go tell people about what you uncovered. It's just a result of who you've become. It's kind of the same way that you became just like your mom. It was like she wasn't telling you about being a hard worker. I'm sure she was, but like but you just became that because you were just around it, right? And so the people that are around you are being lifted up by you, kind of like stepping up into like ownership and taking your power back, as opposed to waiting for Chrysler to say yes or no to you, kind of thing, right? So.
And a lot of times you put yourself in a position where you can accept that power. I'll call it power. You can accept that power, and a lot of it is your mindset and how you go about doing things. And the reason I say that is because one of the things that people will say, "Oh, who are you buying it from?" I say, "Oh, I'm buying it from the owner. Used to be an owner," and like I'm talking about a lot of the black people that I talk to. And then I was like, yeah, it's, they say it's black. Oh, who is it? Black guy? And I was like, no, it's a white guy. What? White guy? He's going to sell you this business? I'm like, and their whole thing was like, why would a white guy sell you this business? Because I told them it was like, you were either going to sell it to me or I sell it to somebody else. And it's like, and at that time it was, something where I was like, why would he sell me this business? But I think what I established as working for you is that you saw that I was a responsible person. You just saw that you can trust in me. And it was more so than me thinking that, you looking at me as an African American. You were looking at me as, who do I feel I can take my business and continue it on in the right way, and is going to put the work in and have the passion is because you saw that I was there every weekend DJing, coming home at night, late at night every week, and, trying to make sure the Treehouse was,
Right. And but it's interesting what you point out there, because, because of the work I did too, it's like I don't even see race, like, especially between you and I, like, I don't when you walk in and go, there's Randy the black guy. Like, and so, but it's interesting though that like even as you were going through the process of buying Treehouse, was that you still had this subtle like belief that like I'm just going to choose the white guy over you because there was you and another guy that were basically bidding with the manager and you and so it's like you could see how that belief, if even in your friend group, was like if you allowed that belief to kind of rule your life, is like you might have made different decisions or whatever that may be. And so, but that belief was just your belief because I didn't have it. I wasn't thinking, who am I going to give this to, the white guy or the black guy? I was thinking, who do I think is going to be the guy that's going to make Treehouse stick around for another 20 years, right? And
see, that's what I'm saying, because you go in when you have this cultural, habit. You go in thinking that, that he's gonna look at me being black, and that's it. That's gonna be the primary factor.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned in this whole process, was that it's not about. And I'm not gonna say everybody in every situation it would have been that way.
Sure.
Because I'm sure you have Italians, for example, an Italian to selling his business to another Italian, he's gonna sell to a black guy. He's probably gonna sell to an Italian. That's my thought, but it might not be that way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But the thing is that once that happened, it opened up another door for me and say, look, it's about how you impress people and how you carry yourself that people can see, and then they will make a judgment off of that. And if they don't think you're good enough, then maybe
you're not.
Maybe you're not. It's you.
Yeah, but if you see that's another perfect example. If you allow, let's just say I chose the other guy, and if you allowed yourself to believe the belief that I didn't get to purchase Treehouse because I'm a black guy, right? Well, then you just gave all your power away to being black. Right. But if you said, oh, shit, well, maybe there was something that I could have done better. Maybe I could have upped my offer. Maybe I could have had more conversation. And then you take that opportunity to improve. Exactly. Right. It's like, see, like there's so much power in failure because you get to learn about like what. But if you give those learning lessons away to, like I used to give those learning lessons away all the time to like, oh, I'm in the wrong industry. Like I do this all the time. It's like I see people that are like more successful than me, and I'll be like, well, I mean, he had a dad that was already a millionaire or whatever. And it's like all bullshit. It's just a way for me to feel better about myself and that I lost essentially, right? And so, like that's a great example of like what will happen if you buy into a belief system, right? And so you stepping out of that belief system was also you stepping into your power, which led to you, now being, business owner. And I do think that you're the guy that could keep Treehouse around for another 30 years. Like that was really, and I didn't like, if Treehouse goes away tomorrow, I'll be okay, obviously. But I mean, I wanted to give you a business that I thought was going to be successful for you the same way it was successful for me. And yeah, it's taken some time after COVID here, like COVID, I literally believe that like the second COVID was over, it was going to be like someone turned the faucet on again and was like,
people just started coming back.
But COVID was so long and so drawn out that it changed people's habits, right? And people aren't coming out as much, or if they are, they're going to closer local pubs but I do believe, because I've seen this just over and over again downtown Windsor, that because I had to go through multiple recessions with Treehouse. Right? Like there were so many. Like we went through the 2000 bubble, we went through 9/11, we went through the 2008. All of these, we went through the smoking, the passports. There was all of these moments, but we were always able to hang on. And so that's kind of not. I think you're probably one of the busier places downtown right now, but because we were able to hang on during those downtimes, when it did come back, we always gained a little bit more, and that's what led us to right where we were before COVID. Was we were the busiest bar downtown Windsor. There was no one that was busier than us. I saw numbers of other businesses, and we were killing them, right? And so I think it's going to come back there, and that's the beauty of Treehouse. It's a very flexible business. You can shrink down and get real tight, and then when the business comes back, you can also make a bunch of money as well. So where do you see downtown? You and I were talking the other day. It's like that there is a energy shift down there recently. Like when I was down there the other day at Treehouse with you. I was like, oh, like it feels nice down here, right? And I've always said that one of the mistakes I feel that Windsor made was just like they just kept on taking their focus away from downtown. But it's like no one visits a city and says, oh, like the suburbs are really nice. They're like they want to know what the city core is like, and so. We've taken the arena, or now we're taking the hospital away. You know, we're just taking so much away from downtown. It's like, it's really hard for tourism. And so what you and I were talking about was that same taking ownership. It's like you as a business owner has to come up with a way to start drawing people back downtown, right? And so it's only when you can't wait for the governments and the, you have to basically. You have to just take it into your own hands, right?
Yeah.
You know? And so why don't you just kind of give me your rundown of like how things are going down there, what you see happening?
Well, like you said, it's not where it used to be because, you know, I was there when the heyday, when it was popping everywhere. And I'm sure a lot of people were here when Windsor was just tons of clubs everywhere, you know, and they see how it dropped. Right now, I feel like I guess it's starting to shift back to, it got to the point where it was just at the lowest. I figure we're at the lowest point last year when we had a lot of homeless and we had a lot of people who didn't want to go downtown because they was like, oh, it's just, you know, nothing down there. And you got a bunch of homeless people, you know, disturbing people in their businesses and doing all this stuff. And nobody's doing anything, and they got a big homeless encampment down there, and as soon as you see that, you're like, I don't want to go down there. So a lot of those things was, as a business owner, giving you like obviously a lot of nervousness and, you know, wondering, okay, did we make a good decision to do this? But I think, you know, and especially Treehouse is unique because we've built a kind of like a generational name where people from different generations know about Treehouse. Like I had a plumber come in there the other day to fix, like literally everybody I called in to do something, that fix something at Treehouse. Oh man, I remember I used to come here with us. Every single person, and that just shows you that Treehouse has that unique sense in downtown that people just know it. And that's what gives me the positivity that we can hang on until things come back. And, you know, the biggest gap we had in COVID was we used to have all the freshmen coming in the next year, and then they would get the sophomores would tell the freshmen, oh, where you go? I went to Treehouse. So we had that consistent, you know, new blood coming in. But when COVID happened, they wasn't sharing that information anymore, so it was like you had that gap. So we building that back now. We getting a lot of the younger people coming back, mainly because we do pregame. We open before everybody else do. We have people come down there early, and you know, and we have a live band sometimes, and then, you know, things like that to keep people entertained. But I feel like now is a shift coming back. I still think we have a ways to go. Yeah. And it's going to take a lot for, I think it's going to, I don't want to say we need a lot of help from downtown, from the city, but I think the city is realizing that they need to do more and focus more on downtown. You know, it's always, now we got a lot of other little pockets. You got Walkerville, you got the East End, you got all these other pockets who are fighting for their, you know, thing. So we kind of got all this competition that we didn't used to have before. Right. So that is one thing that we have to overcome. But I still have a positive attitude about downtown. And, you know, like you said, it's downtown is where you want people, because when you come off that border from the U.S., the face of the Canada basically is downtown Windsor. When they come in there, the first thing they see is downtown Windsor. Yeah. So that's where you want to put your best face on, because then from there on, people are, oh, I love this place. You know what I'm saying?
And we have an example of like what to do. It's like right across the river. Yeah. It's like freaking Detroit went from the dilapidated city to like this. It's like becoming better than Chicago now, you know? And it's like, well, we have the example, but what took it? What was it that made Detroit that? It was like a bunch of entrepreneurs that said, hey, like, let's get together and let's turn the city around, because we can't wait for the city. We can't wait for the government. We got to do it on our own. So what you and I were talking about, which I thought was like a unique concept, was like, Treehouse is the only business downtown, in all of Windsor and all of Canada probably, that inflation never hit. It's like you could still go get a $3 drink. You can still go get a $10 pizza or whatever it is. I don't know what your prices on the pizzas are and stuff. But it's like if you want to stretch your dollar further because it's not stretching further anymore, and you don't want to pay fucking $10 for a drink at these other places, like it's I mean, I don't drink anymore, but it's like I see like the bills of like my friends and stuff when they go, or sometimes I'll pay the bill or whatever, and I was like, Jesus Christ, like fucking $14 for a mixed drink. It's like, that's nuts. It's still $3 at Treehouse, you know. And
we had some guys come in, I think they were from Calgary or Edmonton or whatever, and they couldn't believe. They was like, when we told them what the price is of the $3 drink, they was like, are you sure? They kept asking my bartender, did you bill us right? And he was like, no, this is $3. He said, this is impossible. There's nowhere else where you can get that.
Exactly. And that's what I was saying. Like, that's the draw to downtown. And it's like, hey, you can come to Treehouse and you get a drink you can get 10 drinks for the price that you're paying, you know, for 2 drinks, you know. And it's like, what the hell? It's like, I remember back in the day going to Vegas with my buddies, and this is like 15 years ago. And I remember in Vegas 15 years ago, you would buy a vodka 7-Up and it was $15. And I'm like, who the fuck is paying these prices while I was paying the price? Obviously, I was paying the price. But I'm like, this is insane. This is not sustainable. Like, people are not going to have this much money to pay to go out, right? And then now it's like those drink prices are here, right? Yeah. Like, they're here. And people are paying these $15 drinks, and it's like, yeah, that's all fine and dandy if you want to go to Walkerville and have 2 drinks and that's it. But if you want to go and have a party, it's like, you're not doing it for $15 drinks. It's going to be a $400 night. And so we always said that Treehouse is a spot you can go and have an amazing night and not break the bank.
Break the bank, exactly. And that's what we try to keep. I mean, obviously inflation, you got a lot of things happening. You got minimum wages went up. And so there's a lot of things we're fighting against. But the thing is that we try to stay consistent and always have that reputation where it's affordable to come there. And then also to have good service and make sure that people come there and enjoy themselves, you know, because Treehouse is kind of in between. It's not really a club. It's not really it's a pub, a restaurant. It's a lot of things. We kind of change, you know, because we do change at night to like almost a club atmosphere, but everybody likes it because they feel comfortable. They almost feel like it's like everywhere else you go and you have all these things going on. You come to Tree and you just a vibe. You just come there, relax. You can chill. It's more intimate and stuff like that. So we're trying to. Our focus is to keep Treehouse what it has been, and improve on that, and then, you know, continue to give the best service. Continue to. We do a lot of things outside of Treehouse. Like we plant trees. We do social things. We go out and, you know, hand out toys and stuff on Christmas, or we go to some of these places where they have immigrants who have just come to the country and they might need, you know, things. And we went to the homeless shelter and we gave. We took food there to the homeless shelter. Yeah. So we want to be involved in the community. We want to help Windsor. You know, as it comes back, we want to be a main part of that, you know. So that's our goal, and I think, you know, we're we going in a positive direction. It's not, like I said, it's not like it used to be, and it's not gonna come back right away. But I feel like we can maintain it. Yeah,
and we got, you know, Treehouse is coming up on the 25-year anniversary.
25 years,
longest in 2000,
longest running bar downtown.
Yeah, isn't that wild? Yeah, that's amazing. And so let me ask you one last question. It's like, what do you think the biggest shift has been for you, you know, mentally? You might have to just enter this, like, you know, you'll have to just tune into this, but it's like from going from being an employee your whole life, right, to being the boss, essentially, to being the owner. Like, what is the thing that you were like, oh, now I see this and I never saw it before? Or
Well, you have to see now from the business side, it's a lot of things where, you feel like as an employee, you feel like you were a victim because this business was basically using you as like you a fork or a spoon in it. That's where you are. And the realization that, to keep people working and to keep people, get people jobs and stuff like that, you have to make certain decisions that may not always be what you want to make, or it may end up hurting somebody or something like that. And that's one of the biggest things, because like having to let people go or having to discipline people and do all that stuff, and then explain to them that, look, as much as you think that we just using you and we don't care about you have to make them understand that, we care about you, but to keep your job and to keep this business going, we have to do certain things. And that business side of it is it's an awakening. You know what I'm saying?
It is. That's what I assumed your answer was going to be, that, because I always said it, like, I think everybody should run their own company at some point in their life, because you just, like, if I ever went back to being an employee, which I'm sure I never will, but if I ever did, I would be the best fucking employee on earth, because I would see what I was never able to see, right? And I do believe that it has to go both ways. It's like there's something that happens in employees that once they get a job, they have this sense of the employer owes me because I'm working for them, but the bosses also have the reverse sense, which is like, you owe me because I'm paying you, right? And so I think there has to be a balance there, but the sad part is that the employees never get to see the other side of it, right? And so the balance actually never happens. Whereas employers, if they become aware, they can be like, oh yeah, like, no, I have to be grateful, and a lot of this is happening already. I have to be grateful for the people that are working for me, and show them, love and support and gratitude and all of that stuff. But it has to happen in reverse as well. And the only way it usually happens in reverse is if you go to the other side and run an actual company. Then you go, oh my! I remember when I was managing Rush nightclub back in the day, I was the assistant manager, and there was a general manager who was essentially like an owner, and I was like this like young, just fresh out of business school, and I was like just basically like trying to like make myself seem like I was better and be the good employee. And he's like the boss, right? And I remember years later, after I started running my own company, I went out and visited him in Revelstoke, and I'm like, I just got to apologize for like what a dick I was, because I just couldn't see what he was actually doing. I was like just this manager that wasn't involved in all the numbers and everything. I was just managing people, and I was kind of like undermining his authority. But like, if it wasn't for him, the place wasn't going to be running. Right? Yeah. And so it was such a wake up call for me.
That's the biggest thing that you got to overcome, and you got to have humility. You got to have, integrity. You got to have all these things as an owner, and even having all these things, you still might not convince the employees that, okay, trying to do this.
They'll think you're screwing them
They
over.
still think, because they say, oh, you're the owner. You're making so much money. You don't care about it. I had an employee tell me that. I was like, you don't care about us because you're making so much money in this. And I was like, but, that's not how we try to come off. And that we don't, like for me, it's like, I was always the person who was like, when the employee had an issue, I was like, oh, come talk and we can, and, my wife is more like, she's more like, I guess she's the hammer, and I'm like,
yeah, right.
But it was like convincing people that we're trying to do this, and it's a team and not just us trying to be, take advantage of you. It's the hardest thing you can do as a business, and you're never going to convince every employee that. I mean, we do have a lot of employees. Like we did a video thing where the guy went around and asked the employees, like, not without us knowing, like, what do you think about Randy and Bill? Every one of them said we love, like,
yeah, right.
And we take it with a grain of salt because sometimes people say that, but actually in my gut feeling, I feel like they know that, and they do think that we care about them. Whereas I had other employees where I know that they
they thought you were screwing them.
They thought we were screwing them up.
Of course.
So it's just getting to that point and understanding what business is about. And then, you got to deal with all the numbers, and then you got to deal with all the I know, I'm dealing with now with all the things that happen, like, plumbing issues and all that stuff, So I'm getting a big training in the other side of.
Right, you're recognizing that there's a lot more that goes in.
Because in the employee, you come in like the other day, I'm going through this plumbing issue, and the employees coming in. It's like, oh, can we run this? I was like, you can't run the dishwasher right now because we fixing some plumbing. Oh, but I can't run the dishwasher. I'm like, they don't care that you have to fix this problem. But you gotta tell them, like, okay, this is what we have to do and to make this place run. But they don't see that side of it. So, and as an employee, I never saw that side of it. I always thought, what I'm doing is what I'm doing, and you don't need, you can't take that away from me. And then so that's the biggest thing. I think is just understanding that they don't really understand what you have to do and understand what everything you have.
And it's hard to ever even as an employee to ever get that perspective, because you'd have to go and buy a business and have employees. You'd have to manage. It's like most people will never do that, right? And so you have to find a way to get that balance. And the way I've always found for myself is just to be a person of integrity and and just be kind and that's basically if you do that, you'll get a trickle down effect, and you'll end up having good employees that respect you and trust you, and you'll get some outliers, and but what I found in like my cultures is that if everyone is a part of that integrity that's there, and they understand that there's the people that lack that will just get pushed out like by the community essentially, that I've built. And so it's all good, man. So I guess what do you think it is that Windsorites should know about coming downtown? Everyone's scared. They think it's dangerous.
Well, I like I said, I think it's improving. I'm pretty sure everybody knows that they moved homeless. There was a homeless house that was down on Olette.
Okay.
That's gone. And I think they're gonna be moving them to a different location. But not just that. I think that there is gonna be some new businesses coming downtown, and I'm hearing about new hotels and different things happening downtown, and it's gonna eventually start to little by little come back. But in the meantime, I said we do, we got business down there that are trying to maintain downtown and keep it going and stuff like that. So any support that we get is helping. And like I said, downtown, if you help downtown, it's gonna help the rest of the city. You know what I'm saying? So people seem to think that, I'm not going downtown because but at the end of the day, if you want the things to be better, you got to have a good downtown. Every city you go to, if you don't have a good downtown, then what do you have? You know what I'm saying? So hopefully people realize that, and then people come check us out and understand that, and see what's happening. And they got more police on the street now. That was a big thing that they did. So police are actually walking the street. You don't see as many homeless anymore, like sleeping in different areas. I mean, it's still some there, but you don't see them as much. And they're supposed to be putting more lighting downtown on the strip, so have more lighting, and little by little improvement.
Yeah, I think there's a shift happening down there, and I think if people understand that, so many Windsorites are going to Detroit now. It's like, wow, geez, too bad we just didn't do that for our downtown. And I think it is possible, and I think there will be. I do believe that there is going to be investment in downtown. I think it's going to come, and I think it probably will take a group of a few people to kind of like get it rolling. But I definitely think there's a shift, and I do want, even just as a Windsorite, I want like a vibrant downtown, even though I don't go downtown very much. But it's like, if people come to my city, I want to say, hey, come down and like, let's go. There's all these cool restaurants. There's cool clubs. We got the casino. We got all this stuff. Like, let's go. Like, let me show you my city, kind of thing. Right?
And you got so much going on in Detroit because they got all the teams down there.
Yeah.
When they had the NFL draft, it was insane, and we had a lot of that was one of our busiest times when they had the NFL draft, because people either they got hotels over here or whatever, so they were over here and they were downtown. So that's what I'm saying, that how we represent ourselves, especially when these big events come up over there.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have big concerts, you got big things coming over there. We want to represent Windsor when they 100%. Come, because they're not going to be, oh, we're going to go to Walkerville or something. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but I'm just saying first thing they think of, I'm going to downtown Windsor when they come in here. Because a lot of people don't even know about Walkerville if they're from.
Of course. And it's like, I always used to say, like back when I owned trios, I always say, imagine Detroit with Chicago. Imagine how much business we would have if Detroit was Chicago. But now Detroit is better than Chicago. It's like, and we have events like the draft and stuff, and then they can't get rooms in Detroit, so we're getting this spillover. But then they're coming into like this dilapidated downtown with missing teeth, like the buildings and all this. Right. That's like, wow, come on, man, we gotta step it up, and maybe at some point. Whatever.
And I think, like I said, it's not even about us competing against those other areas, because it's good to have a Walkerville. It's good to have 100%. These other different places that people can go. But my point is that your downtown should also be. It should not be. It should be one of your main focuses also. It should be probably, when your
should be your highest priority.
To make the whole city complete. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So that's why I feel at this point. And I know it's going to take a while, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I'm positive about it. Anyways, this has been a great conversation. Great insights on everything. So we'll do it again, follow up in a year or so, and see how things are going downtown.
For sure.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Yep, no problem.